Sometimes the best cars are found in the most unlikely places. I found myself in Romania, a country that's full of contrast. This car is something special. It's one of the very few cars that adorned my bedroom wall in the 90s. It was like a spaceship that came from outer space and just blew all the performance figures completely away. An amazing hypercar and a unicorn with a special owner. It's the Bugatti EB110 Supersport. And the numbers of these that were made, it's quite vague. Some say around 139 in total, if you include the later models that weren't built by Bugatti after the company went bust. This is the car they came back with from the sort of doldrums since the 1950s where they hadn't made anything. They came out with this absolute barnstormer. Nice and windy day I've chosen for this. The Supersport was launched about 6 months after the first model came out, the GT, in 1991 when they announced it. 6 months later they came out with this one. It was about 160 kilograms lighter, 60 horsepower more. So it took the brake horsepower from 560 to 610. How's my maths on that one? 50, not 60. But again, all of these figures are quite vague. 0 to 60, also quite vague. So some reports say it's 4.4 seconds. If you go to Bugatti's website, they quote this car at 3.26 seconds to 60, which in the 90s was totally unheard of. It was absolutely ridiculous speeds. Top speed, again, debatable. On Bugatti's website, they say it's 218 miles an hour. That magical 220 miles an hour was the sought-after number that was chased by Jaguar with the XJ220, with this car and eventually surpassed by the McLaren F1. But this car is a total unicorn for many reasons, not least of which the colour. This amazing yellow, which is about 3 or 4 at the most, were made in this colour, and the interior that was spec'd by the original owner. So it's one of, if it's not the only, SS that was built with a GT interior. So they went for luxury on the inside rather than the Spartan cabin that you get in the SS. There's a very particular customer that bought this car in 1994, someone who enjoyed performance, someone who broke all of the records in Formula One, fastest laps, pole positions, won 7 world titles. Michael Schumacher.
How does it feel to treat me like you do? When you laid your hands upon me and told me who you are. Thought I was mistaken. I thought I heard your words. Tell me, how do I feel? Tell me now, how do I feel? Those who came before me lived through their vocations, from the past until completion. We'll turn away no more, and I still find it so hard to say what I need to say, but I'm quite sure that you'll tell me just how I should feel today.
Well, I bought my turbocharged car from the 90s. I used carVertical to make sure it hadn't been crashed or stolen, and it came back with a clean bill of health. But let's say you're looking for something more modern that could potentially challenge a Bugatti EB110. You might consider something like an Audi R8, and here's one I prepared earlier. So you go searching on the internet, you never know what you're going to find. Until you plug the details into carVertical, you just pop in the reg or the car number. It's a 2017 in blue. It looks stunning, actually. carVertical also gives you a market value overview, which is quite handy when you're buying, and you'd never know that there was something wrong with it until you plug in the VIN or the reg number and it spits out the full report, and in this case gives you all the greatest hits. So it's got contested ownership with a leasing company, potential finance issues, stuff that's going to keep you awake at night and tie you up in legal battles. Is that something you want in your life? I doubt it very much. Also, the mileage is dodgy. Someone has driven it backwards to wipe off 10,000 miles and got busted by carVertical. So there you go. Other than that, it looks pretty good. It hasn't got crash damage. It's got an MOT, lots of green ticks. But basically, I think it's one to avoid. So in this case, always better to check your car first before you buy it. Use carVertical, and if you use my special discount code BCD, you get 20% off when you use it. Click on the link for more information. Now, let's get back to the sound of that quad turbo. This car is extremely special, and I'm going to drive it around this vineyard fairly slowly, just to savor the moment. Bugatti released the SS version just 6 months after the GT came out, which must have really upset a few early birds. The GT had 553 horsepower, the SS got 603, and that is enough to tip the scale on dynamic power delivery and get that tail twitching. The EB110 was unveiled in 1991 with an outlandishly expensive launch. The cars cost $380,000, which was quite a lot less than Jaguar's XJ220 at £470,000 and the McLaren F1 at £540,000. These three models were the first to really deserve the moniker of hypercar because they could breeze past 200 miles per hour in a way that the Ferrari F40 and the Porsche 959 just couldn't do. But this is where it gets interesting. Jaguar set the first speed record with the 220 in 1992 and recorded 217 miles an hour at Nardo, which is banked and therefore presents resistance to the top speed. But it was independently verified as the world's fastest ever production car. Bugatti went next a year later, again at Nardo. They achieved a top speed of 218 miles an hour, just enough to claim being faster than the Jaguar XJ220, but the speeds weren't officially verified, and Jeremy Clarkson did outdrag a Bugatti with a 220 on the Grand Tour, so it makes you wonder. It took McLaren until 1998 to go for an official speed run, and they decided not to go to Nardo and instead use Aero Lesson, which is a completely different animal. Rather than running with a continuous turn on a bumpy surface, Aero Lesson has a banked run onto a billiard table flat straight that lasts 5.5 miles. When I did 251 miles an hour there in the Bugatti Veyron with Top Gear, I could have eaten a bowl of chow mein with chopsticks without spilling any on the leather. I mean, even James May could do it. But I take my hat off to Andy Wallace and McLaren because the F1 was so light on downforce. When I drove Rowan Atkin's car up to 186 miles an hour in Abu Dhabi, it felt ghostly light at the rear, so to achieve 241 miles an hour in that really took some balls. Schumacher never tried the McLaren F1 as far as we know, but he did do a group test that included the F40, the Diablo, XJ220 and famously the EB110, and that led him to buy this car. It wasn't just about top speed. The EB110 was the first hypercar to feature a carbon fibre monocoque like Shuey's F1 car, and during his test, Shuey found that the 110 handled beautifully. It could be pitched into a corner and driven on the throttle with the majority of the power blazing through the rear wheels. Here's Chris Harris just flinging one sideways. Bugatti even entered the EB110 in the Le Mans 24 Hours, but it never made it to the end. The upshot of all this expensive racing technology piling into these exotic hypercars was a peak era of analogue super performance. That also coincided with the aftermath of the 1987 stock market crash and a plunge in demand for all the manufacturers, as well as accusations of sabotage at the Bugatti factory. That kept their numbers low, and as a result, the residual values have been climbing. The last one sold in 2025 for $2.8 million, triple the value the model was achieving just 10 years prior. Love a tape deck, and this car came with a cassette in it already. Enigma. So perhaps Shuey was an Enigma fan, something we share in common. But for soundtracks, there's really only one thing that matters the most: the engine. Hear that? Purrs like a kitten. But revs to 8,500, so it's going to be really exciting to feel a little bit of pace. I mean, we're not going to go crazy here, but we're going to hear something on that soundtrack. The pedals are quite tightly packed together. You didn't want to be really tall and sit in this car. Heads on the ceiling. I'm 6'1", but I tell you what, I'd bend into any shape but to fit into this machine. The smell of it, this car practically smells new. We're talking 4,894 kilometres on the clock, and nearly all of them were done by Shuey. Handbrake off. What an absolute pearl. I think the colour contrast, the bright yellow with the blue interior, is really spectacular. And I can only just imagine his excitement in 1994 when he bought this car on the way to winning his first Formula One championship. You know, to buy something like this, to treat yourself when you've made it, you know, the pinnacle of your career, you've reached Formula One and winning races. What a great way to celebrate that success, buying one of these monsters. Bugatti really went to town with it. This car really, there's a lot of notes in it that remind me of my first ride in the Bugatti Veyron. You can see it in the nose, the shape of the car, and the sheer dominance of the power out of this crazy drivetrain, V12, kind of Formula One derived engine with 4 turbochargers to deliver that power. Really, really insane. And just love the way they've done it. It's just brute force. That's the Bugatti way. You take it up to the modern time, the Veyron with its 8-litre engine compared to the 3.5-litre unit in this. But at the time, no one had heard of quad turbo. That was Bugatti's way of trying to get around turbo lag. Well, we'll just double up the turbos. That'll deal with that problem. Pootling around at low speeds is not what this car was designed for, and I hope at some point to get it out into its native environment, which is the open road, where you can properly send this machine. It's interesting noting some other people have made comparisons with this car. Famously, Grand Tour took it around the Ebola-drome and ranked it 23rd. They said it was beaten by a Fiat Abarth. Yeah, I don't think so. I think that's like comparing an elephant to, I don't know, frickin' Mickey Mouse. It doesn't make any sense. This car is ridiculously fast on a tight, twisty track in the rain on old tyres that are probably well past their sell-by date. Yes, this car won't show you what it's made of. Underneath the skin, though, you've got a ridiculous four-wheel drive system. 73% rear biased, 27% on the front, with a viscous coupling that lets the front axle talk to the rear where there's a limited slip differential. So effectively, it's a rear-wheel drive car. The weight on this was around 1,430 kilograms, which back in the day was reasonably heavy, and you could thank the four-wheel drive system for that. And it's interesting how Jaguar ditched the four-wheel drive system to save weight on the 220, and you can have that debate amongst yourselves, which was the better way to go. The long and short is, this car's extremely quick off the mark. A lot of the journalists struggled to achieve the 0 to 60 times that Bugatti were quoting. That's because they were being fairly careful with the clutch, except for one French journalist who dropped the hammer on that sucker and got it down to about 3.3, which is where this car really belongs. Stratospheric performance, basically. Visibility through the back isn't good. There's a lot of cooling going on there, which again reminds me of the Veyron, where they had, I think from memory, it was 14 radiators to cool that engine, that monster engine. But who needs rear visibility when you've got these massive mirrors? LOL, tiny. But the gearbox, it's absolutely sweet as a nut. There's nothing crunchy in there. It's really, this feels like a time warp car. Beautifully engineered back in the day. I think that's really what you notice. The precision in everything, and you feel it at the steering wheel as well. There's nothing loose here. It's tight as a drum. Suspension, it's firm, but very sophisticated. It's very, very elegant, and it feels like it's got fantastic poise. Now, I would say that it had one careful owner, but apparently Schumacher did crash this car into a truck. He blamed it on brake fade. I wasn't there, so I can't judge him. The fact is, though, it's got 4-piston Brembo brakes on it. You would hope that that would stop the car fairly effectively. I'm told pretty solid aerodynamics. One day I hope to prove that to you in another film. But just looking at it, it's sculpted. The car was designed to look absolutely beautiful, but also very functional, to slice through the air. You can see there's really flat sides to this car that are really quite powerful. If you look at the really sculpted lines, almost reminiscent of the new F80, which has got those very striking flat lines on the side and those blades on the side to really cut it through the air effectively. And the rear wing, which you notice, that's a big step difference to the GT. So the GT came with a retractable rear wing. I think it made it more slippery in a straight line, but this was built for downforce and it's adjustable. But you will need an Allen key to do that. In fact, you need screwdrivers and Allen keys to look at anything technical on this car, including the engine bay. You can't just pop the back. You need to get to about 4,000 RPM before you start to rain the thunder. I would say that it's really all happening up there, but it's around 5,000 you're going to really feel this car singing. Not going to happen today, promising things I can't cash in, but it's definitely there. There isn't much below that. That's what you can expect, though, with a relatively small 3.5 litre engine, turbocharged. This car, though, it's unmistakably Italian. The cabin is beautifully appointed, stunning. Look at these ribbed leather seats. Designed by Marcello Gandini, arguably the best car designer of all time. Ironically, his parents wanted him to be a pianist. He left home when he was 18 and pursued his dream. Engines, car design, absolute beauty. Think Lamborghini Countach, and this, absolute masterpiece. Genuinely, there's no real compromises with this car. A lot of hypercars are compromised, they're flawed. It's got a really good turning circle. hydraulic power steering, so it's direct. You can feel everything through this helm, and at high speed you can imagine that's going to give you that assurance and feel you want to travel at around the 200 mile an hour mark. The dashboards in Ks goes up to 400 kph, and again the rumours of around the top speeds of 355k. Really hard to prove these days, but apparently it did do in excess of 215 miles an hour at Nardo, but that's what they all say. Thing is with Nardo, if you can do 215, 217 there, it does equate to kind of 220 on a flat straight road. So really where this wants to go is aerolescent, where you can just get the hammer down in the straight without the resistance of the curves. They just loved a bit of walnut back in the 90s, didn't they? It's just there. You look at it and now we kind of laugh a bit because it's sort of a bit Rover-like from the 2000s. But what's awesome with this machine, it's over 30 years old, I mean, and it still delivers incredible punch, but it's got buttons everywhere, so there's no touchy-feely dashes, there's no iPads shining back at you. Interestingly though, they're quite early on pioneers, obviously got the butterfly doors, push button, but buttons that work. And up here as well, quite solid citizens here that turn on things like fog lights. Oh shit, that one just fell off. Don't tell anyone. Where's it gone? Where did you go? Oi, oi. Oh no. Oh no. I see you. You're down the side. Okay. We never saw that. That never happened. It's an old car. And it was already like that when I got in. Alright. Back in the little cubby box. As I was saying, quintessentially Italian. But honestly, everything else in here is super solid. Old school everywhere. Tells you what the climate is in the car. You've got your aircon. There is a CD stack behind me with tape deck and presumably Shuey's original Enigma, which I think is just awesome. I'll be listening to that tonight. Big fan of Enigma, and it's a wonderful place to find this car. It's now living in Germany, but it's travelled to Romania for this amazing event where there's an eclectic collection of very special private cars. But I think for me, this one absolutely steals the show. Total unicorn. Schumacher's first major purchase of a hypercar, peak of his times, getting into his stride, about to win multiple championships, and I just think this thing is just like such an icon anyway. But to be his car and his specification, his unique specification, potentially the only one configured with the yellow and the GT interior, I think is what makes this thing so unique and special and extremely valuable, because I think a run-of-the-mill SS probably set you back about $3 million, something like that. I have no idea what this would fetch, but significantly more. But maybe he'll take pity on me, and I mean, I'll just take it as a loaner, you know, why not? This car's a character. There's some amazing cars in this paddock over here, and the only other one that really turns my head is the Enzo and the Ferrari F40 Le Mans, the LM. It's wonderful. The modern stuff's incredible. Yes, the technology is so advanced. The things they're doing with traction control, what Koenigsegg are doing with the Jesko, how are they making it do those acceleration figures with a combustion engine and rear-wheel drive? They're finding a way. But when this car came out, this was absolute pinnacle as well, and up against some very stiff competition. It's all carbon monocoque to save weight. They replaced the doors with carbon as well, getting rid of the aluminium. That's how they managed to skinny up the SS to find it that little bit extra power to weight ratio, if you like. And early doors ECU, engine management systems, all coming together with the brute force of 4 turbochargers on an F1 derived motor. But it is massive. I say F1 derived, it's a big old unit, but similar sort of thinking to the time. It's just fantastic. And I hope this gives you a little bit of an insight into a car that I personally worship, even if it's a little bit slow for now. But this is just the beginning of hopefully my journey into 90s hypercars. So far, so brilliant. Drove the McLaren F1, raced it against the Bugatti Veyron when I was in Abu Dhabi on Top Gear, and actually, as far as I was concerned, the McLaren won. 0 to 60, I managed to beat the Bugatti off the line, despite the fact that I didn't have 4-wheel drive or 1,000 horsepower, just off on the clutch. And you just feel more directly involved. These cars are so rewarding. I think that's why you get such astronomical figures for these cars from their era, because they're just really assured at high speed. There's a sense of quality in them. You can relate to the technology a little bit easier than perhaps with some of the really, really crazy modern stuff. It's not to say I don't enjoy driving them, but I do appreciate the elements of lightness, the elegance of the design, the cues that they took on the the outside that aren't so aggressively aerodynamic, but still cut you through the air well. And these magical interiors that they're just real characters. Absolutely love it. So I've got to thank the owner. He's a very private individual. You are a legend for letting me drive this car. And thank you, Schumacher, for speccing such an absolute pearl. Right, might just quietly give it a little bit of acceleration on the way back here. Let's just see what she's got. Found a nice little stretch of cobbled road here. It's not too bumpy, just right. Exactly the right kind of porridge. Speaking of F1 technology, this car's got wishbone suspension with pull rod damping. It's either pull rod or push rod, both worked in Formula 1. It's a great solution for getting really direct response. Woohoo! Listen to that turbo! Holy molio! Alright, that's about all I can do on this trip, but I hope it gave you a sense of what this car is really about. And I'll just have to save the rest for another occasion, but I'm definitely getting back in one of these. What a raucous tone coming out of that turbo. It speaks to me. Love it. Absolutely love this car. Dream machine.